Start the recording and start off with introducing Dr. Mathonsi, who will speak first, followed by Prof. Mbanga, and then Francine, who will also cover a presentation on housing, self-build, etc. So we're looking forward to some very interesting, exciting presentations. And really, one of the things I think that's particularly important is that this new white paper is really a departure from a lot of what has happened before, and it really looks at a kind of new set of ideas, a new set of doing things. So I'm very looking forward to the presentation by Dr. Mathonsi. And I hope everybody has some questions and will interact with him towards the end. So please make note of your questions, put them in the chat, and then we can ensure that we have a good discussion and questions towards the end. Good. So I think let me stop at this point and hand over to Dr. Mathonsi. I think, will you introduce yourself and also what you're going to cover? And the floor is yours. So please go ahead. Go ahead. Thank you very much for coming.
Doc, thank you so much. Good afternoon to you, to the academics that are here, and all attendees. Starting with the introduction, my name is Ntsako Mathonsi. I'm in the Department of Human Settlements in the policy unit. I am actually quite new in this role, so you will actually bear with me if I happen to demonstrate some of the gaps. I'm still under instruction. I actually call myself an intern, but regardless of that, I'm actually quite learning a lot in this new position of mine. Maybe secondly, to apologize because when I was given the instruction to participate, I was actually told that what I need to cover is a summary of the white paper as well as our policy priorities of the sector. So that's actually what I prepared. But when I saw the program, I noted that it speaks to some parts of affordable housing that is actually handled by the other sort of sister division within the policy unit. But in any case, I want to believe that even what I sort of prepared today will actually assist to gain some understanding in the space. Once again, I'm happy that I'm coming in before Prof. Mbanga and Prof. Francine. I know that at least when they come after me, then it will, the balance of actually knowledge and experience in the game will actually be fair in that way. Chair and colleagues, this is basically what I'm going to be looking at quickly. I know that I'm given 20 minutes and I want to try and cover everything in 15 or so minutes in the interest of time. So this is what basically I'll be looking at quickly. So the purpose obviously is to apprise on the Human Settlements White Paper, as well as the Human Settlements policy priorities, even as they affect the sector. So the first part obviously will be dealing with the white paper, and then the second part of the presentation, which will be towards the end, that's where I'm going to be talking about the priorities. So as far as the white paper is concerned, we know that it seeks to create an enabling environment for developing, for the development of integrated, sustainable human settlements, even as we move from housing, because very, very much core to this process, it's to end up at a space where we're able to introduce a Human Settlements Act, which will be the very first act that speaks to human settlements in its entirety. Just as we know that now we are still speaking Housing Act. And also very key, as far as the white paper is concerned, is to create or to set out a new vision, as well as objective theories, theory of change and key policy statements. That's where I'm actually going to spend some time in this presentation, where I'm going to be speaking to some policy statements, policy positions, roles, and responsibilities across various stakeholders in the human settlement sector. And also to indicate that very key to this process is an outcome of a series of program evaluations and expenditure reviews that were done in partnership with the National Treasury as well as the DPME, that actually shows that really we need to change the scope, the scale, as well as the pace of human settlements development and delivery. Now, so the strategic foundation of this process, it's still based on Section 26 of the Constitution that talks about the right of access to adequate housing, which is the responsibility of government and very close to the human settlement sector. And also the SDG 11, which seeks to position cities as key leveraging points for human settlements opportunities for all, as well as access to basic services, energy, housing, transportation, as well as the green public spaces, and reducing of the utilization of those items that have a negative impact on the environment. And also Chapter 8 of the NDP that speaks to sustainable human settlements and improve quality of household life, as well as the space economy as it gets transformed using the human settlements. Now, this presentation actually speaks to the last point that I've just mentioned now among the three, where human settlements and transforming of human settlements is put right at the center of all other activities well in the society, as far as the economy, infrastructure is concerned, environmental sustainability. So human settlements, Chapter 8, is located right at the center. And actually, we understand how it has to feed to all other key items, as you see on the screen there. Now, the policy context that actually is giving expression to the review and the development of the white paper for human settlements, even as it stands, is actually looking at the prevailing notion that the right of access to adequate housing requires this. By the way, this actually, we interpret it as the wrong way of looking at it, that the notion that the right of access to adequate housing means that the state has to build houses for every single person, which constitute a misinterpretation, even as we emphasize this in the white paper. Now, but fundamentally, the right of access to adequate housing does not even oblige the state to construct the housing for the entire nation. But instead, it talks about the state providing adequate measures that will prevent homelessness, prohibit forced evictions, as well as address discrimination, and focusing on the most vulnerable and marginalized groups in the society, which actually also speaks to issues of military veterans. Now, these measures requires interventions by government from, number one, spending priorities, legislative, administrative interventions to actually achieve the right of access to adequate housing. Now, and the objectives here with is to address the prevailing gaps and inconsistencies in the housing and human settlement sector, to also respond comprehensively to the contemporary as well as local international policy reforms on what relates to housing and human settlements, as well as to adequately respond to integrated planning strategies, which include the important role of the market, the public environment, institutional capacity, as well as the participation by citizens, which are instruments towards the design of sound, effective policy frameworks. Now, what are some of the emerging principles that we are actually bringing into perspective as far as this new or as this white paper is concerned? Issues of integration, alignment, innovation and flexibility, as well as inclusiveness. So we're saying that as far as this process is concerned, these are some of the emerging principles that are actually becoming very important and have to be considered in this process. Now, the policy shifts that we are actually beginning to see as far as this process is concerned is the recalibration of the grant funding, so as to optimize the performance of our development grant instruments. We're talking about some of the grants being aligned or being rationalized.
So now you see, there's no.
I don't know if.
No, carry on. I think could everybody just put themselves on mute? Do carry on.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chair. And also, so I'm still on this slide, also to guide on the de-risking mechanism to enable the private sector financing and also to maximize and leverage government funding, and also to inform, I think I've already touched on this one, to inform the amendment of the Housing Act, which will actually eventually yield us the Human Settlements Development Act, which is the process that is going to follow immediately after the approval of this white paper. Okay, so this top part is actually making me not see, but this is basically the vision that is sort of coming in, just as I've indicated in my opening slide, that part of this white paper process is to actually introduce a new vision as far as human settlements is concerned. So this is the proposed vision that you see, which comes with its impact statement. So now the vision talks about visible outcomes from well-coordinated spatial planning systems that will have transformed. Okay, so there are things that are appearing on my screens that are actually affecting my view. I just want to remove this so that at least I can see only the screen. If you can just bear with me for a moment, that I remove. Okay, so I'm struggling to remove. I don't know if this also is distracting your view as well.
No,
you're only able to see the screen. So on my screen, there's something that is showing, and it's sort of hiding some of the topics. So I'm trying to remove it so that at least I can.
No, we can see your screen clearly. So it should be fine if you can carry on.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was able to remove, so there was something floating, so it was blocking my view of what I have to present. But now I'm okay. So the new vision that is sort of being introduced here or being proposed, it's a visible outcome from well-coordinated spatial planning systems that will have transformed human settlements in South Africa into equitable and efficient spaces for citizens living in close proximity to work opportunities, with access to social amenities, as well as essential infrastructure. If you look at this vision, this is basically what the BNG policy, the comprehensive plan for the development of integrated human settlements, is actually trying to bring into perspective. Now, the impact statement there talks about the nation housed in integrated and sustainable human settlements. Now, the next part is basically what I want to focus more on, where we are coming up with some of this new policy proposal and actually trying to emphasize some of this policy proposal, which will actually be at the center of this new white paper. The first one is to give priority to the vulnerable groups. Here we're talking about the elderly, the child-headed households, persons living with disabilities, as well as military veterans, and also issues of collaborative review of the current land administration to embrace empowerment of women to access land and land titles. Another policy proposal, we're exploring some quicker, simplified, and less costly process of registering and transferring land and property for poor household, as well as the adjustment of the preemptive right clause to ensure upward mobility and curb the informal transaction of subsidized housing. Some of the proposals that are coming as far as that is concerned is to say that reduce it from 8 to 5 years. Issues of engagement of beneficiaries in decision-making, also advocacy, and as far as informal settlements upgrading is concerned, towards the prioritization of participatory planning and implementation. We're talking as well emphasis of in situ upgrading as well as incremental upgrading, where we are saying that relocation will be the option of last resort. This is actually emphasizing what is already currently in the policy. Managing the space as far as backyard rental as well as small scale rental is concerned by actually trying to introduce some regulatory measures. Social housing market, which actually the narrative will say that this is one of the highly subsidized industry, but what we're getting from it really does not justify the investment that government puts to it. So we're actually coming up with principles to anchor issues of affordability, accessibility, safety, as well as it to contribute to socioeconomic growth. And then number 10, they were talking of consideration of cost-effective construction.
Dr. Mathonsi, can I just check whether the slides are progressing? Because we've just got the vision and impact statement on our screen. Are you progressing them?
Me. Yes, I am actually on slide number 14 now.
I'm not quite sure why they're not progressing.
Does that mean you are still here?
Yeah, we're the vision impact one. So maybe just change the presentation mode, and then I think we should be able to see it. And then progress the slides.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I think just use this one for now. That's fine. This is great. We can see this. So policy proposals, yeah, this is working.
Okay. So I was already in slide number 14.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
All right. But here actually we're sort of introducing our policy proposals that are coming in with the white paper, where we're talking about focus on vulnerable groups, where we're talking about collaborative review of the current land administration, where we're talking about some quicker, simplified, and less costly processes for the transfer and registration of land and property, especially for the poor households, where we're talking about the adjustment of the preemptive right clause from 8 years to 5 years. Okay, now they're no longer moving this. Oh, yeah, it's moving.
Yes, that's fine.
I had already touched on this slide. I was actually on slide number 14. But safe to indicate, Chair, that I'm going to share this slide just immediately after the session with you, so that at least you can actually share as well with all attendees.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. So I was on this slide where I was speaking about what the policy proposals as far as social housing is concerned, where we're talking of introducing some principles that will actually be centered around the issues of affordability, accessibility, safety, as well as for this sector to begin to contribute to socio-economic growth as well as the economy. And also to look at finding cost-effective construction method by using some of these technologies, alternative building technologies that will actually be assisting even as far as the digitalization of the National Housing Needs Register is concerned. And also to find ways of ensuring that human settlements projects that are contained within the urban edge to actually manage issues of curbing the urban sprawl. And also issues of emphasis to be placed on settlements design principles that will produce safe, livable, as well as inclusive spaces, which will result in improved quality of household for the citizens. Now, progress to date, we have actually concluded the consultation processes, which actually ended, I think it was on the 15th of March, after having two extensions. The first one, actually, we actually had our deadline as the 31st of Jan, and then we actually moved to 28th Feb, and we move again to 15th of March. Now, and we did this with gazetting. We actually were getting these dates gazetted so that everyone gets to know. Safe to indicate that the white paper actually is actually available in various websites of our partners, the department website, the UKSA, Dear South Africa, Twitter, Facebook. We're actually trying to reach as much stakeholders as possible. We have done roadshows with all provinces, and then we've concluded this. Some of the imaging issues that we get, even as we engage in roadshows, those that are coming prominently is the issues of changing the qualification criteria to actually prioritize South Africans and not foreign nationals. This is what we're getting. And also issues of creating jobs and empowering of communities, upgrading of informal settlements, the use of the technologies and densification, especially in urban spaces, the management of demand, as well as spatial transformation, and also to be bold in some of the programs that are not sustainable. And we emphasize the programs that are sustainable, actually also looking at how the economy is doing, and also to provide regulatory framework as far as small-scale rental and backyard rental is concerned. Now, the space that we're going to in the process now, Chair, is to have thematic discussions on various work streams that are going to be taking place within this month and the next month. And these are some of the themes that we're talking about. As you can see on the screen, I know that my 20 minutes is running towards the end now. So what are some of the human settlements priorities that we're looking at? The first one, obviously, is the white paper that I'm talking about. And also key to that is some of the special emphasis on the special and vulnerable groups, emergency housing, eradication of mud housing, removal of asbestos roofs, blocked projects. And then the second priority there is about the title deeds eradication, the backlog that we're sitting with, and also emphasis on issues of land and service sites, informal settlements upgrading, provision of affordable housing, as well as social and rental, and also socio-economic amenities. So issues of digitalization, these ones are cut across issues of digital transformation, empowerment of designated groups. This we're actually already featuring in our day-to-day processes, even in our APPs and AOPs, and also using technologies, just as I was emphasizing. So these priorities obviously will be delivered using these multi-pronged approaches where we're actually involving all key stakeholders, which will include the communities, the private sector, the public sector, and even other sector departments. And we'll also continue to do this work using the prioritizing the service sites, as well as the IBT norms and standard, water-wise use technologies, improved engineering services, solar panels. These are some of the items that we're actually adding on the subsidy quantum, so that at least we produce and we deliver the house that actually even meets the standard of what the society expects, even as it stands today. So the department will enter into partnerships with the Agrima SA. By the way, I think some engagements have already started to that score to promote the use of IBT. But safe to indicate that some of the challenges include the cost containment measures that have been introduced that are forcing the sector to reduce on the use of in-person meeting, where we actually will prefer to meet with stakeholders to do collective engagements and coordination. So the sector hopes that some of these revised approaches are not going to really create some more challenge on the work and the impact of the department, because really the cost containment has actually made us to cut down on the use of our service providers. Dr. Gibbert will know best on this one, as well as the professional resource teams, that were actually supporting us in some of the work that we're doing. So the recommendation is just, Chair, is to say, like, note the synopsis of the white paper, as well as some of the key policy priorities that the sector is running on. Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity that you have given me.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I think I would like to ask for any questions and comments. We'll have time at the end, but I think while the presentation's fresh in everybody's mind, I think it's very useful to have a kind of few questions and any comments. While people are thinking, just to confirm, Dr. Ntsako, this particular white paper is available on the Human Settlements website. Is that the case?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Doc.
Okay. And is it still open for comments?
Well, the formal
Okay.
process, the formal process, as announced in the Gazette, has closed on the 15th of March. But the ones that you can sort of engage with us at any given point in time, since it still will have some time, just as I've indicated that this month and the next month we're going to be having work stream discussions. I think you will still have a chance as far as that is concerned. But formally from the Gazette, we've actually closed the ones that were coming sort of to the provided email just as it was published.
Okay. So let me just check. Are there any questions on the chat? Anybody have any urgent questions? In any case, I think do save them also for the end. Dr. Mathonsi, I think if you can unshare, we'll then ask Prof. Mbanga to load his presentation. So just from for the students, for everybody attending, what's very important about this presentation and this white paper is it really shows the direction that Human Settlements wants to go. And part of what you can do is by reading the white paper, looking at what's there, you can test out some of the ideas. You can look at that in your designs when you start looking at how you, in terms of your entries for this particular site. Okay, thank you. Dr. Mathonsi?
Do confirm if I was able to successfully unshare.
It's still showing. I think Prof. Mbanga, I think you need to share on your side.
Or maybe let me try and leave the meeting, hoping that it will automatically unshare and then join again.
All right, there we go. All right, thank you very much. We now have Prof. Mbanga. Prof. Mbanga will give a little introduction to himself. Very well-known figure within Human Settlements, has really worked in this field for a very long time, is a full professor at Nelson Mandela University, and always has very interesting things to say and very considered approach in terms of the field, and has driven a whole range of interesting initiatives. So we're looking forward to your presentation, Prof. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Prof. Gilbert, and good afternoon to colleagues, Dr. Mathonsi, Francine, and other colleagues on the call. Thank you so much. I hope my screen is also visible. I will I will just, with your indulgence, also take out my video just for stability. Thanks for the opportunity also, and also thanks for the wonderful input from Dr. Mathonsi on the white paper. There might be some convergences in some of the points I'm going to be making. My presentation, I just thought it to talk around sustainable settlements, and in particular the green settlements, as a path to sustainable cities in South Africa and beyond. I might not do justice to the topic. Some of the topic that I'm running with, where I am at the moment as well. But this presentation within this time slot will focus. I will just do a brief context, national context of sustainable cities and human settlements, some contextual issues to consider, but I'll also look onto global context. I understand already that the brief to this competition has done adequate work in that regard. It's just to reinforce some of the statements being made in engaging the city center. I don't have that as a slide, and also then I will just conclude by providing an highlight on some of the research agenda issues that we are currently engaging in, and also I'm engaged in also at Mandela University. Based at Mandela University, as you can see the screen, in the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and Technology, in the School of Built Environment, but in the Department of Buildings and Human Settlements. I'm also holding a research and engagement chair for human settlements in the university. Let's see if the slide is going. Okay, this is South Africa, as we all know, and the provinces, and the Eastern Cape is where the award ceremony for this competition will be taking place, in particular in the Nelson Mandela Bay metropole in Gqeberha in particular. Important to note is that I just thought just to pick this up in the sense that as we understand how space behaves, is that the definition of space as a city or as a district doesn't presuppose that space only survives through its own definition. I think we understand that there are feeders into a space and a place. So it's important just for us to also note that. I guess some of the issues are already coming up in the white paper, to understand that space in terms of its growth and its performance, it is influenced by the feeders into that space, whether locally as in a province in South Africa, in the national space, in terms of the movement of people and the goods and all of that, or including our interface of that minute space as Gqeberha with the world, the bordering countries around us. So I said I'm busy at Mandela University. Just for you're getting the presentation, what we believe we exist for, and what are we aspiring to be as this dynamic university that offers this cutting-edge knowledge. Maybe that's why there is also a chair of human settlements in this university. Just also, our work is also influenced by the bottom line, the issues I mentioned for graduates. I won't go to the focus areas, but our work is influenced by our conviction on how we do our work. As working in the chair, I consider myself as a transdisciplinarian because I have to cross the boundaries of the traditional housing, if you want to call it a discipline, to work in spaces outside that discipline. As such, as a university, therefore, we've got our research teams. It's important just to highlight that, that our research agenda is based on, I think, up to 2030, and I guess we're reviewing that to look beyond 2030. The oceans and coastal science, you might be aware that we're hosting a campus on ocean sciences at the university, where much work is happening there around research on the life in the sea. And we focus on social justice and democracy, which is also driven by our humanities in particular. But as this faculty as well, we straddle into issues of social justice as we deal with issues of spatial justice as well. And environmental stewardship and sustainable livelihoods is an area that is nicely coming up in the white paper by Dr. Mathonsi, which is also our critical focus in terms of research, teaching, and learning as well. I may say that the Tribe for Human Settlement is situated within that theme of environmental stewardship and sustainable livelihood. So we're not only looking into space as in functions. How do you create neighborhoods, and how do you create a city, and therefore how do you create a nation, but also in terms of its behavior economically and also environmentally. We have to engage those issues. The importance of innovation in digital economy is also our critical focus. Mathonsi was raising an issue around IPTs, which is about also construction materials, and which materials are more appropriate for which climatic zones, and also with climate change and global warming and the heating within the cities. What are we saying about those materials? These are some of our broad, I would say, themes that we're following as a university, or our research is situated on. Just also to also conclude this point about the university's focus, as I've mentioned, the environment is our focus. I'm raising this because this competition is sitting within the spaces of the environment, but also in also dealing with issues of healthy and sustainable communities and cities. So this competition that we're about is also fitting into these research themes in the university. I will then move into the next point. It was just about who we are as Mandela University and where our research focus is as a university now. I thought just to provide a preface to the research themes that were the themes and the priorities that we're pursuing at this point in time up to 2030. I think perhaps in the school and even much more broader than the school itself and the shell. For South Africa in particular, we do know that we've got the National Development Plan. I spoke about the issues of spatial justice, and I think that we are all aware that the issue of spatial transformation is one of the key agendas of the country. And I guess the white paper also does make a reference to the importance of spatial transformation and how housing can be utilized to reconfigure the space as it has evolved over centuries, if you may like. So that becomes an area. I won't go into the detail of this because this is on the NDP itself and in chapter 8, which then gives some kind of guidelines to the housing and human settlements sector on how it should reorganize its business to attain these spatial outcomes. I guess that might be mentioned also previously, issues of spatial justice, and importantly is that we have to dislodge how people are settled in urban spaces in South Africa, and ensure that there isn't an unfair allocation of public resources between areas. Hence, we talk about urbanity and rurality and the interface between these economically and socially, but also we talk about urbanity and rurality in terms of resource allocation from government, private sector, and any other investors, because we believe that if we engage these spaces in this manner, what the NDP calls a balanced approach, we are likely not to, to control the movement of people into urban areas, but to mediate the pulling factors into urban spaces. Basically, that's the thinking that we have to still seek to mediate such pulling factors by limiting the pushing factors from rural spaces that are unproductive, not that unproductive, but are not engaged productively as well in terms of their development potentials. So spatial justice deals with those issues, and I also link sustainability and resilience within those. But the NDP does, I think, chapter 8, you may go to chapter 8, I think students in particular, to understand these issues related to spatial development principles that underpin the work of housing and human settlements in the country. I will then again move, this is a national context, as I was just indicating, this is but a national context. Maybe moving from the national context and then from the principles, the indicators of spatial development performance are also listed in the NDP. This but a summary. There is a need to integrate rural and urban areas. The competition is in the urban space, but what happens in the city centers and in the city edges, as Dr. Mathonsi was indicating, is also informed, but what happens outside those spaces. So policy responses and programmatic responses need to take the two into account. And in the type of planning and design thinking has to understand the nature of rurality of the inhabitants of these spaces and urbanity, those combined. So our responses should be seeking to appreciate not as a homogeneous species who are engaging in these spaces, but they are coming from different spaces and have got values and cultural constellations they want to uphold in those spaces. This is a critical issue. I know, Prof. Gibet, some of the conversations I also lead on LinkedIn, with the time tend to be slightly controversial, but useful, also deal with those issues about whose space is it that we're talking about. And therefore, you need to understand the beneficiaries of those spaces as a medical doctor would understand the patient in the surgery, or it's important to understand those. So moving into those, we need to look into those issues of integrated transport systems and land use in our sustainability planning and design thinking and research. We need to understand those, the importance of broadening the economic base of towns and cities through supply of reliable infrastructure needs to be looked at. Dr. Mathonsi was mentioning this point, that it's not only about housing and human settlement, but human settlement anyway is much more broader than housing and does engage the economy in these spaces, and we need to engage those. Land and property is also important, and for the city centers, in particular, Gqeberha, as it is a situation elsewhere in the country, we are seeing to a decline of that open space and continuing deterioration of that urban space with abandoned building by property owners, which then become hives of any forms of social ills. We are seeing that also, we've seen that over time in Port Elizabeth and also Gqeberha currently, and even in East London, as it might be the case with Johannesburg and other areas in the country. So we need also, as we seek to plan for these spaces, to also think about how do we respond to those issues, the behavior of those matters. I will therefore be moving also to some kind of a global context without taking time. The African Union Agenda 2063, basically, this is the African philosophy for development. And it's important for us to always remind ourselves about how in Africa, we believe we should be engaging these global development issues as well. What works, what makes us African, and what works in terms of methodologies in an African space. I am also involved in some discourse networks, like the Pan-African City Network and also the Inclusive Cities Network with other scholars in South Africa and elsewhere. So it's important that we also understand that as we create and recreate urban spaces, we should also understand whose spaces are these for, and the multiculturalism of those places as a departure from the previous the design philosophy on those spaces is an issue at hand right now, because we might be talking about dysfunctionality of those spaces, and yet it might be people who are trying to fit themselves in spaces that are not compatible with their being as an African. So it is becoming increasingly important that we look into those social dimensions of space design, in particular when we deal with the cities and the city centers. The SDGs, I won't go too much. They are 17. All our work is all about that. And I guess also this student competition is seeking to contribute to one or more and many of the 17 SDGs. I want us to move speedily. I won't deal with these issues. They are already in the competition brief. Urbanization, I've alluded to them in some way when I'm talking about a space as not existing in a vacuum or existing for its own sake without any influence of anything outside that space. That's basically what I was trying to raise. So urbanization is one issue that has taught us that space behaves differently than we would like to. We might have a demarcation board that sets boundaries of towns and cities, but how humanity behaves, and even beyond humanity, how we behave is not very much up around that. And in designing and building and designing spaces, we need to take that into consideration. So urbanization is one of the issues globally, but importantly, an issue I want to try to highlight is what we consider as unguided urbanization. Here, the issue is about it's urbanization that leads itself. And we're calling for a departure from being worried about urbanization to an extent that we don't appropriately respond to urbanization patterns and trends, because urbanization is happening, has been happening, will happen. So what becomes important for city planning and city and urban design is whether we are responding to what urbanization presents before us as urban planners, urban designers, and other built environment professionals. That's what is becoming increasingly important for us to have stable cities. I wanted to highlight that. And a typical example of that is informality, urban informality, which is a clear indicator of settlement patterns in an urban space, which are driven by household and not government and not municipalities and not any other critical role players. People create and recreate spaces through informality. We've seen this in South Africa and other parts of the world for quite some time. I won't go to the details of informality, and I think we can deal with that. We know what informal settlements are and how they influence. This is a part of Gqeberha, the informal settlements, which is adjacent our medical school, Mishville campus, which Mama Mavis, who stays there, say that this informal settlement was set up, or they invaded the land 2 weeks after Mr. Mandela was released from prison in 1990. These are some of the characteristics of an informal settlement. It's just to indicate, just to give some sense of those spaces and the issues around those. You will have another informal settlement in New Brighton, which is also the eastern part of Gqeberha, the Christian informal settlement, where the communities took that piece of land for some time. Some are being relocated by the municipality, but others have received relocation. And the issue around their refusal, as we engage them through research, as a university, they make across the city this point that it's not Dr. Mathonsi that they don't want to relocate at times. They've got a concern about where they get relocated to. So it's the whole issue about the availability of well-located land, not just suitable now, well-located land relative to informal settlement upgrading program. What does that mean? Because they say that they're not keen to be moved from almost close to the city center to NU30 Motherwell, which is on the eastern part of Gqeberha. And therefore, there are social networks and their livelihood get disrupted within that process. I think these are basically some of the issues, not only in Gqeberha, maybe even across the country, Chrisani and all its challenges, and many more informal settlements. Something to note that informal settlements and quality of life, as it's been mentioned, is that it's not only about top structured, the physical structure, the materials used to build the houses through this rudimentary self-help initiatives, also about the municipal services, solid waste management, and how that gets managed in those informal spaces. This is still in Gadeha. And we have also seen how those communities are seeking to access services like energy, electricity, in what has been called in South Africa as izinyoka-nyoka. So these are some of the challenges that we are perhaps exposed to and familiar with across the South African landscape. We have seen also some transformations, if we can move speedily, into what different role players led by government have been in dismantling the apartheid patterns and intervening on informality. This is Duncan Village, a historic informal settlement in Buffalo City Metropole in East London. It came around the early 50s, and it is being upgraded through a relocation program. But the issue when we went with students to Reston, which is almost 10 kilometers outside the CBD where Duncan Village is. Duncan Village is well located, I think, in all respects. And now the issues were about that people are not occupying their beautiful houses this side in Reston because they have been moved, and some have taken up the houses and then reverted to the informal settlements because of the points I raised earlier on. We need to deal with those moving forward. Exactly. But there are also some nice and beautiful cases around Timbaza in Williamstown, where communities are involved in the building of their homes, and they are taking care of the aesthetics of their homes, in particular, managing the space itself, as we saw in Timbaza in some studies. Something to also note, I've mentioned earlier on, is around rurality and the importance of understanding rurality. If the balanced approach is going to be sustained in South Africa of dealing with the urban spaces, urbanization within a context of another space existing, moving towards more regionalized planning and territorial planning, engaging those spaces as per their characteristics, then comes the issue of rurality. The interesting patterns in the rural space, as we've seen, is that these are spaces that are holding the national heritage in terms of the built environment, and whether we'll succeed in sustaining that type of heritage, which is a resource, the critical resource for ecotourism, on the other hand, as we have seen in other parts of the world. So this is rurality and modified homes in the rural areas, but through people's initiatives. Something to note, I've brought in a slide, which was the point of discussion in one LinkedIn post, is around the peri-urbanization and the rurality and ruralization as other students are engaging at the rural level, not only in Model University, in other universities right now, is the fact that there is a pattern, Mathonsi, of middle-income earners, so-called in the strata, who are making home investments along the major transport corridors in provinces. We're seeing the emergence of suburban homes in what we consider as a rural space beyond peri-urbanization. So it's important to understand rurality not just as that which was rural, but as a rurality as it is today, and it is growing. And what forms of growth are we seeing in the rural spaces today? So we need to note that. I think these are some of the contextual issues I thought that maybe we just needed to look at. I will also be mindful of time, not go to South Africa's transformational journeys. It was just about giving now at the national level the context. I've dealt with the NDP, and I want just to move to maybe the other slide, maybe the other component of this presentation, the Snapple Green Village. This is part of the research work that I'm currently involved, and not only as a chair, but also with other role players, even within national government. Dr. Mathonsi mentioned IBT, but we're also aware that there is a 10-year roadmap for science, technology, and innovation for human settlements that have been part of its development since 2018. Professor Gibet was chairing a conference session around that roadmap in our university on the 6th of May in 2019, when we were hosting a South African Student University Forum Symposium. So we dealt with that. So we have then, from then, been engaged in this issue of greenness, green settlements, and but we call it as a green village. It sits within the whole definition of human settlements as the UN habitat that must be livable, integrated, multifunctional, and well-connected. We've spoken about that. The broader definition that the country uses also is this, which is more looking on sustainability in terms of the principles of how do we deal with an environment and the resources today and into the future. So we uphold that. And then these green settlements also have to take considerations about the integration dimensions at planning and design level, that you have to have a focus on the functions, understanding the functions. Some students engage studies around monofunctionality of human settlements around Nelson Mandela Bay metropole. Some students honors and master's level. How do we deal with multifunctionality of settlements, and therefore even with the city centers? Social has spoken to that, and also economic dimension of integration. The issue is that, as we understand that, if you plan and design for a housing project, that's what we'll achieve as an outcome. But if you plan and design for an outcome of a human settlement that is less sustainable, then there are certain principles that should guide your planning and design work. And that's a point I'm raising here. And I'm just picking on issues of integration dimensions as planning and design principles, because those you need to have them in the beginning of in your thinking about the space and what we're going to do with that space. Because if you don't, you might achieve something that you were not intending. You plan for a housing outcome, you achieve a housing outcome. You plan for a human settlement, and that's what you achieve, because your design process will automatically be about what you want to achieve. I've spoken about sustainability dimensions, and I know that in this workshop we'll be dealing with those. But just to move on the human settlement issue and greenness now as a green village, our departure is that a human settlement that is sustainable and green will not be about housing, but housing will be a component of that. There are a number of elements of that settlements that need to be taken care of. But the point I want to raise here, which has been raised by Dr. Mathonsi, is that those elements, I think, need to be understood not for the provision of, the management of those elements is important. The issues of water, the issues of energy, the issues of sanitation. How do we plan to deliver those within a context of urbanization and climate change? How do you plan? Because you can't plan to deliver them as a previous context and not of today and the future. It's not just about providing water. We've seen with electricity that electricity cannot be the only resource for energy. Hence, we speak about energy and not electricity. And how do we provide? Similarly with water, we've seen to the issues of water crisis. How do we deliver? We provide water as a municipal services. But it's not about surface water. It's about the resources that we need to explore or to engage. I don't want this slide is basically about the broader understanding of a human settlement as we engage on this type of research. The other one is about this quality of life, and also the greenness of this village should be about also providing clean water. How you provide clean water may not only about capturing surface water. Yes, you should. It might also about looking at other methods of reclaiming maybe used water, maybe gray water, and what system you will require in the provision of a home where water is scarce. May not be about a hope and a prayer for rains to fall, which will not fall for 7 years, as we have seen in Mandela Metro and in this region in the past few years. Waste resource, the focus on waste and particularly solid waste is not only about waste as trash. That is, we're engaging about waste to wealth studies. The importance of the economy of a human settlement and a green settlement is also about how solid waste is managed and is engaged by households, communities, small enterprises as a critical resource. So waste research is continuing also. Issues of clean air and pollution in the urban spaces become a focus. I spoke about energy, clean energy, but then beyond just energy and the nature-based solutions to energy provision, which becomes important for the design processes of affordable houses, because you can't recreate problems you are seeking to solve when you design houses and the spaces. You design a house such that your own bedroom is in a corner that is naturally cold and is not grabbing any form of solar energy. It means you are recreating a problem, because your next solution will be the artificial solution of heating systems for your house and your bedrooms. So your designs become very critical in the context of energy crisis as we are in South Africa. We're talking about the greenness, and I won't go to all the principles, but these are natural spaces and places where people can live, work, and play. It's about mainstreaming environmental issues, development programs. When I talk about integration principles in these different facets, it's about what we call mainstreaming. A village that can be developed utilizing natural resources without harming the natural environment, create a win-win situation for the environment and the community itself. Is important. We talk about there are papers, I think conference papers that talk about, when we talk about this green settlement, green village, what do we mean to it? Beyond ICT solutions, digitalizing the same settlements and also the same spaces we're redesigning. I want to move also speedily without, these are all the principles, the definitions of the green village, and I've spoken to them, and these are the outcomes we seek to achieve in these green villages we are. I won't go to all of them. As I just indicated, I'm mindful of the time, and just to note, as also the white paper highlights the importance of IPT being mainstream in the human settlement development programs into the future, for us to note some of the challenges, known challenges, through case studies implemented not only in South Africa and also elsewhere, that the technologies we're talking about are not really expensive at introduction. But what we've been doing as a school, and the chair through a postdoc fellow, has been to look on the life cycle assessment of the cost of embracing these innovations, whether looking at from the point of energy, because you might be saying that they're expensive today, the capital outlay, but the benefits and the cost benefits in the longer term might be reduced. As I was just making the point about, why would you place your bedroom under a tree or in a corner where it's naturally cold? Because it means they're not looking now on what costs will come after that design choice. So we need to note that it's not only about, of course, government will not be keen to engage something. I mean, the PFMAs and MFMAs but it needs a presentation on your tender document about what become the much more longer, longer term cost benefits and other benefits of engaging technology. That's what we advised in the municipality, where we're working with different stakeholders on an informal settlement upgrading program, which has brought up these issues as well. But it's an international small-scale pilot within an ISO project, more like retrofitting, where we're bringing in those elements I spoke to of energy, water, and solid waste and other elements in an informal settlement upgrading program. We'll be completing that later this year and hand over with an exhibition conference in Cape Sea. Political will might not be there, perhaps displayed by the costs as presented, if not motivated adequately. Cultural stereotypes on use of some technologies. It happens. I mean, one area in Ida in Queenstown, I was involved in a study for Water Risk Commission around the user acceptance of the earth agar technology, synthetic technology, where we found that almost 96% of the members of the community never used that technology after it was completed, because it came that it was because it's dry sanitation system. It was just that at some point they had to interact with the natural processes for the bulking of the solid portions. So there has to be some natural human interface with that process so that the material, the dry material is bulked for bulking agencies and then taken elsewhere for composting activities, then the economy. But then the community felt, we can't do this. Skills might be lacking in the beginning, including building inspection skills for technologies, IPTs, and others. Uncertainty of the government's impacts around suppliers of contracted materials for new building systems or walling systems and users, and unknown alternatives, raw materials or chemical inputs where products are important. That's when we tend to promote local production of alternative building materials. And as a university, we're also engaging the issue of mass timber construction. MIS has been running with that, and we're interfacing with that work around mass timber. We're trying to look on solutions that can be homegrown or that will rely on our own resources and therefore not create challenges for communities. I'm really concluding at this point. The Green Village has got the role players to note, researchers, which include your technologies and systems, persons, innovators, and manufacturers, government, legislation and policies, and also community for social acceptance. There are many role players, not only about social acceptance, it's also about other role players if they are doing their bit in a green village, not only social acceptance. I will conclude at this point by truly just the SDGs that the green settlements, about 7 of the SDGs that the green settlement approach we're taking seems to be addressing. I spoke about issues of poverty earlier on and everything else, but I think here we understand that those issues are those issues, but they're not natural, as Madiba once mentioned. Hence, we're talking about recreating and redesigning city centers for better living environments, is because we understand that we can make and remake spaces and places, and therefore this competition. In conclusion, this is a summary of the focus areas of the research that we are leading as a university, and in particular from my chair. All that I've spoken to talks about sustainable human settlement management models, looking on vulnerabilities and survival strategies of the urban poor. Hence, I mentioned the issue around the informal settlements, and also to understand who are going to be occupants or inhabitants of these designed houses in the city centers, at what income levels and what issues are they dealing with. Looking on urban housing regulations and policies becomes also important as we think about designing the spaces and the spaces. Urban space production is another of our focus. What are the forms that are emerging in the urban spaces beyond abandoned properties and the like? What are the other forms emerging? I spoke about peri-urban and slightly rural, the forms emerging. Okay, I'm concluding on that. Public space infrastructure provision and also rural-urban interface. We're focusing on that. These are some of the websites you may want to check around the work we're doing on the Green Village with various some partners, universities in Germany, and also DSI, CSIR, and other colleagues. Thank you so much, Prof. Jerry,
okay.
And also my apologies for overstepping the time slot. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for a very detailed presentation. I think there's a huge amount of material there that we can think about. If you can share the slides, that'll be great. I think people can follow up on the references and look at the detail of some of the work. Before we carry on, are there any kind of urgent questions or comments? We'll have time at the end, as I mentioned. I can see there's a comment from Dr. Mathonsi enjoying the presentation. Good. Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do is let's ask Francine to put her screen on. And what we will then do is we'll have a kind of proper discussion and set of questions, I think, at the end, because they're quite diverse. You can see we're getting the kind of national view from government. We're going to get the kind of research view from Prof. Mbanga, and what Francine is going to share is really kind of some thoughts about how some of this thinking gets translated into very practical actions on site. So I think, Francine, please go ahead, and I think feel free to introduce yourself and get going. We can see the screen.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much, Jeremy. I appreciate it. First of all, thank you to all the students that are attending today. I did not expect such a turnout before another long weekend, and probably in your holidays as well. So thank you very much for coming by. And then thank you especially to Dr. Mathonsi and Prof. Mbanga. Dr. Mathonsi is very kind to call me prof as well. I'm not a prof. I do not have a PhD, not yet. So, but thank you very much. It was flattering. My position here is to help organize the competition. That is why I'm here. I also helped last year and to help conceptualize the competition and to enjoy the work that the students submit. So today I'm going to quickly talk. I'm going to make this quick. I'm going to talk about units, density, and self-build. I'm going to try and answer some of the questions from last week, and I'm going to try and speak as conceptually as possible so that your ideas are safe, that I do not impose upon you my ideas, that we just speak conceptually about addressing housing and the housing problem and housing units and density in South Africa. First of all, a bit of housekeeping. You will see on the CIB competition webpage, as I've communicated last week, there are 2 pages, one for the 2023 competition, one for the 2024 competition. If you go to the 2024 competition page, you will see that all the PowerPoints from last week have been added. You can see them over here. Let me just get a pointer. This green here. If you click on the green, you will see the PDF PowerPoint. And if you click here, you will see the video from last week's workshop. So if any of you missed it, if any of your peers or fellow students missed it, it can be found here, and we will try and update it weekly. Another bit of housekeeping is I received an email from a student asking, once again, for clarity on postgraduate students participating and even lecturers participating. For this specific competition, if you are an architectural student, you must be an undergraduate student. We do not allow postgraduate architectural students or doctorate architectural students or lecturers at architectural, any lecturers for that matter. You are, however, allowed to include team members from other disciplines, such as medicine, excuse me, environmental science. One second. Construction economics, any other discipline, you are more than welcome to include team members, just not architecture. I also received an email from a student from a school that was not listed in the list in the brief. This student is in a school for technology. You're welcome to participate as long as you do not have a degree yet. A higher diploma, a 4-year higher diploma, is, in my opinion, equivalent to a degree. So if you're still working towards achieving the higher diploma, please, you are welcome to participate. Drop me a mail and I will confirm as well. Okay, next slide. So today we're going to look at density, units, and self-build. We're going to look at it very quickly. Last week we looked at the 10-hectare site. 10 hectares is a lot, folks. It's a massive site. And we said that it's 100 meters by 100 meters. We looked at the site plan and said this red little block is 1 hectare. Now, you do not need to develop the full 10 hectares. You can also focus on 1 hectare. And there were some questions about the density. How do you achieve 60 units on a hectare? Now, if you look at a low-cost housing unit, which I'm not saying you should produce, I'm not saying you should propose low-cost housing units. You can produce any sustainable housing that you feel see fit. We're just using the 40 square meter low-cost housing unit for this example. Now, the RDP model, which we have replaced now with Breaking New Ground, but that model said that such a 40 square meter house is usually on a minimum of a 250 square meter site. So if we look at the CAD again, these are sites. And they are, where's my notes? I think I have the same problem there we go. So these are 252 square meters, these sites. And they are, I think, 14 meters by 18 meters. And if I place a 40 square meter house on it, this is what it looks like. And this is what we see in photos when we look at RDP development. We see these matchbox houses placed in the landscape, spread across hectares and hectares of land. Now, I had a question last week as well regarding the brief. How are you going to manage the accommodation schedule? So for this scenario here, I have filled in the accommodation schedule for you. And it is 35 two-bedroom, 40 square meter units. And the average per household in South Africa is 3.34 people. And that times 35 units means that we have 116 people on this hectare. And 35 units times 40 square meters means that we have an overall floor area of 1,400 meters square. Now comes the coverage. The coverage is when I look from the top and I look down, what is covered? What areas are covered that I don't see the ground? That is the coverage. And in this case, it's 1,400 square meter. And the percentage of 10,000 square meters is 14%. Okay. This is recorded, so you can refer back. And if you ask at the end again, I will explain it again. But let's play around with the site. What will happen if I place some of the houses on top of each other? Now suddenly my coverage is less. Now suddenly I can have more houses. I have more open ground. I can add more and have a denser site. Let's quickly look at how this accommodation schedule changes. Now the coverage is less. Because when I look from the top, and sorry, this sounds condescending to some of you, but I know that some of you are having difficulty with this. If you look from the top, less of the ground is covered. So the coverage in this case is only 8.4% of the site. Now look at this here at the top. Should you not develop the full 10 hectares, you can write, for this proposal, our team developed 1 hectare of the site as per, for example, the image above or figure 1. Just have a figure showing what you've developed, what part of the site you've developed, if you do not do the full 10 hectares. You might be a first year or a second year. Now, what happens if we place more buildings on top of each other? Last week, we had a question, how high can we go? What is the height limit? There is no height limit. You can even stack them together. Obviously, this coverage and this coverage will be exactly the same or even higher. This is completely at your discretion. And every time the density remains the same. What we are doing is we are clearing up ground. We are clearing up parts of the site to add more houses, add more units. And this is how we will achieve the 60 units per hectare. Now, how high should we go? And what is actually sustainable? There are quite a few models that explores this. And the World Economic Forum had a very interesting article a couple of years ago, where they say that we should aim for a Paris typology rather than a Manhattan typology. We should go no more than 6 stories up or 4 stories up. We should aim for low rise but high density. And there are various reasons for this. It becomes expensive the higher we go, the material use, as well as the energy use. It also becomes depressing. People are unhappy the higher they go. Children use connection to the ground, and people have less custodianship over their properties. They cannot extend another room. They cannot have a garden. So if you do not have to do it, if you can achieve certain densities lower down or a low rise through developing a strategy, a design strategy that affords you high density, then please do it. Now, this image here comes from a seminal work, the Urban Task Force, towards an urban renaissance. Now, all these references are in the speaker notes, so you will receive them with the PDF. But this is a very good example as well of a 75 units per hectare. So this is more than what you need. And this is very much the same exercise that we've just done. A high rise or rows of houses, or medium rise, medium coverage. And these are very interesting because the high rise development is standing in an open space. So it has negative space around it. And whereas the street layout with 2 to 3 story houses, a bit more positive. You can almost see the streetscapes. You can see the cyclists. You can see the pedestrians walking. You can see the off-street parking. But the last one, an urban perimeter block, is actually quite good. It gives you a public space and a private space, and it gives a shared garden for everyone. It also allows for different unit types. Not everyone has 3.34 people per household. I'm alone in my household. I live next to a household with 8 people in it. So households differ. Sometimes people are single. Sometimes people are a family of 8. Design accordingly. Design for somebody that have just left school. Design for somebody that is 85 years old. And design for the single mother. Yeah. Now, this is a quick video. I know when I spoke for the first time with Prof. Jeremy about this project, we spoke about density. Can one unit actually achieve a density? And I showed him this video that I did in my honors year study, where we had to look at low-cost housing and a development that is denser, better external space, shows patterns that results in a sustainable human settlement that eradicates poverty, give people custodianship of their homes and of their lives, of their economic activities, of their consumption, of their production. And this is far quicker to do than a SketchUp model. I thought that I would just quickly show you that. And then this afternoon when I was playing on SketchUp, I thought, let me quickly just do a configuration similar to that. And what was interesting here is I could achieve, I think, 112 units per hectare with this configuration. And if I have workshops, I can achieve a configuration of 100 units and workshops as well. Now, my question to you is, what is your strategy to densify towards 60 units per hectare or to achieve more units per hectare? Because density is one of the major contributors towards a sustainable development, sustainable human settlement. But also, what is your strategy for the unit? What is your strategy for the future? For 40 years from now, a child born today, their world will be drastically different from our world. And can those who live on the site have a hand in the densification of the site? Can it be within a circular economy that people have control over? Or must it come from a linear economy where there is a contractor, where there is an engineer, where there is an architect? Is there a way for your proposal to empower those affected by the housing problem that they are currently dealing with? Or is that not part of what you propose? Is self-build possible? What is your urban planning strategy for the 10 hectares? Now, I want to stress this, you cannot solve all these problems. You cannot answer all of these questions. And last year's winners clearly also showed that they presented one or two good ideas or one great idea that intersected with various other issues as well. So do not become overwhelmed by everything. Look at your concept, what you wish to address, where you see an opportunity lies from the site, from the context, from the environment, from what Prof. Sujukule spoke about, from what Dr. Mathonsi spoke about. Identify one or two or three issues, and then from that, give us an abstract. Now, this year, we even have more prizes. We've added the future strategy, the self-built and sufficiency, and the unit design. So you can target those. You do not have to only target first, second, or third prize. If you're a first or second or year, the unit design is definitely for you. Now, let's talk about the future strategy. This is from the IPCC. And it shows that if you were born in 2020, then in 2050, when I'm 70 years old, you will be around about my age. And your world will be drastically different. You will experience ecosystem collapse, freshwater ecosystem collapse. Your oceans will start collapsing. You will experience displacement. You will experience mental health issues. Infectious diseases will occur more often. We, animal and livestock, I will be surprised if in 50 years' time or even sooner if we will still be able to have animal agriculture, whether we will have more food deserts, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. So these homes that you are designing must first take into consideration, and the brief says it beautifully as well, the changing climate. Be resilient towards the climate emergency, but also provide for the people that live there when other systems start collapsing. Which brings us to this one unit. Now, I showed this last year as well, very briefly to students, and I always show this to my master students when they have to look at the themes and their topics. And we look at existing design variables and emerging design variables. Now, I'm not talking about a brief now. You will decide for yourself your brief. The brief is sustainable housing. But you will decide for yourself, you're only catering for margins that will take over Earth in 5 years' time, or you are only catering for families of 3, or you're only catering for students, or you are catering for an aging population because in 5 years' time we will not, our fertility will drop or something. That scenario is yours. Or you will just say, I'm providing housing for the people of this community right now, which is actually the best brief. But on top of that, you have your typos, your tecton, and your typos. You have your site, cultural, natural. You have the typology. Is it within an industrial thinking or an indigenous thinking? And then you have the tectonics, the visual tectonics and the technology tectonics. But then you also have emerging variables. So the existing variables are easy. Cultural topology. In which culture are you playing? Are you proposing? And for which cultures are you proposing? Natural typology, we have various climatic regions in South Africa. Yours is very specific. Plant growth, what nature can provide, what systems you can tap into. But then there's industrial thinking typology. Will your house be built by a contractor from far away, perhaps imported from Germany? Or will your unit, your development, be built by the people there, tapping into the indigenous knowledge systems that is available to the people of this area? The visual tectonics, will it be colonial? Will it be indigenous? Will it be Eurocentric? Will it give an African feel? Will I be able to look at it and say to myself, this is in the Eastern Cape? Or will it look like something that should be in the Northern Transvaal? What visual tectonics are you choosing? The technology tectonics will get a bit to that as well. Are you using materials that are available for this site, for this area, for these people. And then we are now looking at the emerging variables: climate, resilience, adaptation. How are you adapting your proposal to be able to be resilient to the climate emergency? Now, resilience means to spring back. It means that when you get knocked down, you get up. You don't stay down. And it's the same with development. When my roof fell in a few weeks ago, I have another neighbor who could fix it immediately. So I have resilience in my neighborhood, in my community. When I run out of water, I have a borehole. When the power goes off, I have solar panels. So I am to an extent resilient. However, I do not have super insulation. I have to burn fossil fuels every winter to be comfortable. How can your development redress imperialism? And are you providing economic and social fairness? Are you providing a foothold towards a circular economy? You know, when we look back at this development here, forgive me, this is a dormitory for people to go and sleep after work. They go there and they sleep there. How are you going to cultivate and propagate and provide people with culture in a development that looks like this? So, service provision, system interception, the circular approach, grey water harvesting, water reuse, harvesting energy that is more sustainable, sun. We have so much sun in sub-Saharan Africa. Prof. Mbanga also touched on this. And then amenities, system interception with circular approach. When I lived in the city in Sunnyside, there was a spaza shop in every corner, and it was so convenient. When I lived in a high-rise building, there was a lady that could fix my clothes and another lady that I could buy dinner from in the building that I lived in. And that was fantastic. And then regenerative potential. Can you take the site back to what it previously was before the scar that human settlements effect? Can you regress and go to a status that allows ecosystems to heal and tap into those ecosystems? And then what number of these patterns are you going to use on your units? And will some units be different from other units? I'm mindful of time. We're going to look at self-build. In South Africa, every single person lives in a building that was built either by a contractor or by themselves. I live in a building that was built before I was born by an architect who built it from hand drawings by himself. So currently it is estimated that between 4 and 5 million people reside in informal settlements in South Africa. All of these settlements are self-built. People in South Africa have a great will to provide themselves with housing that is not being provided for them. Is this housing adequate? Definitely not. Definitely not. The heat, the cold, the fact that it's not habitable spaces, the fact that children have to grow up in these spaces, it's disquieting and unsettling, to say the least. And yet we have this human capacity in South Africa to build. Now, if you look at this image up here, when I saw this, it reminded me of a project that I asked students to do. And that was for them to look at a greenfield site. And then to imagine this is what we do to the greenfield site when we provide low-cost housing. We sweep aside the natural systems and we impose upon it one system, matchbox houses. And this happens often. So what would the development look like if you superimpose one on top of the other, these natural systems and these houses? And I give students this as a workshop, construction economics students, third-year students, not architecture students. And I ask them to just, in a workshop for 2 hours, sketch over it and give notes. And they always tie into the river. They always re-chart the river. They always bring the houses together, an open land. They're not so good with making positive external space. They're not architects. But this is what they always do. And it's interesting. But of course, as romantic or as how much we want to romanticize poverty. We shouldn't. No one should live here. No one should have roads like this. And no one should have this landfill close to their home, the trash gathering. So we're almost done, folks. I promise we're almost done. Here are some examples of self-build. The one in the top left-hand corner is a gentleman that used precast concrete to build units that are more stable than sink houses. This here is also a development close to Bloemfontein, where you can see how this does not really have culture. But here you can see the culture emerge as this person starts building their own home. This one here is from Elemental. And the architect here provided some structure to the people, and then as well as an open area for them to self-build, to self-fill. This is quite a controversial project. And you will see here in the bottom right as well, it looks quite a bit like that one density study, quick thought that I showed you. But this is a concept. This is a concept worth looking into. What will happen if the framework is given to people to fill in and build themselves? This project here comes from Urban Think Tank as well, and it deals with developing low-cost housing for South African slums. As Prof. Sejukule said as well, in sub-Saharan Africa, we have a 55% slum, 55% slum rate, which is terrible. So this is an option towards rehabilitating informal settlements or upgrading informal settlements, where slowly but certainly, as opposed to chase people from their homes and displace them, they travel from their informal homes a few meters into a habitable home. Another example would be this project by MMA architects. And this is a sandbag construction. And here you can see that the visual tectonics, this looks like a concrete block house. So the visual tectonics still reads the same as a brick house or a concrete house would read, but the construction is far more sustainable. We have timber, which is a carbon sink, and then we have these sandbags that provide insulation, that provide thermal comfort, and the community can assist in building. Lastly, we have another one from the Urban Think Tank, and this is also a beautiful project that the community could build. The documentation provided allowed for the community to build this project and even extend upon it. So to conclude with the last slide, these 4 projects, the one that is Eurocentric, one that is from Haran, a conical dome, which is removed from what we see as Eurocentric, a house in Kenya, and a luxury safari resort in Africa, giving 4 very different tectonics, 4 very different views on how you could approach this problem before you. And with that, folks, I conclude. If we have any questions, now is the time. I'm looking forward to it. I know Prof. Jeremy is as well. So please put on your cameras, put up your hands. There is no question that is stupid or unnecessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I think we've had a huge amount of material from kind of policy direction, the National Development Plan, to research projects, to thinking through how green villages work, to a lot of ideas that Francine has presented. So this last bit, and it'll be fairly short because we're running out of time, Switch on your cameras. It's very informal. You can switch on your unmute yourself, ask a question. I can't see necessarily everyone. So welcome to put up, I think you can put up your hand or you can make a note in the chat box as well. Just while everyone's thinking, our next workshop, same time next week. You can use this link as well, so it's very easy to link in. We're going to start focusing on process. Because what we've done now is we've kind of looked at the high level views, what are the mechanics, and what we're going to do next week is look at sustainable design generation. Where do ideas come from? How do we design for sustainability? Really, what's the sort of toolbox of ideas that we couldn't draw on to really think through sustainable systems, sustainable designs? The second lecture is going to be on criteria, performance criteria, because as soon as you claim that you have achieved sustainability or a green building, you need to back it up with objective numbers. So that's very much what Francine has started talking about in this presentation. So we'll have another lecture on sustainable performance criteria. How do you measure sustainability? How do you prove it? How do you show it in your competition entries? And then last of all, to show some case studies. We have Geeta Gavan, who presented last year some very interesting case studies and generated some very interesting discussion on how do you work at an urban scale? How do you integrate housing into cities, create employment, mixed use? What are the processes? How do you link community social infrastructure into housing? So she will present as well. So it'll be a very interesting, rich set of presentations. So we look forward to that. Good. Okay. Any questions or comments? I don't see any at the moment on the chat box.
Everyone is ready.
Everyone's tired. Dr.
They're ready
Mathonsi?
for the long weekend.
Dr. Mathonsi, any comments on your side? Any last comments?
Well,
thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, really, I was trying to actually chat to Mem Fanton there on the side. And well, to also really appreciate this presentation. Look, we speak theoretically, especially when we talk policies, projects, and the use, spatial land use, the use of space. But I actually have seen her making it very practical in the sense that when we talk 40 square meter house, really in a space where we're talking of a yard service site, really, in fact, I've seen her like really bringing that mental picture to something very practical. And I want to believe also that Prof felt the same way, Prof Mbanga, because I know it's also a practitioner come academic. So we're almost in the same space, but I think it was very interesting for us to have this view. And also when we talk density, I think when you write it on a policy and when you see it being made practical, I think even you begin to appreciate the work that goes behind this. And really, I think we have, she's already my contact, and really, I'm actually going to. So this was actually a very wonderful appointment, and I'm enjoying it. Thank you so much, though.
Okay. No, thank you very much. I think a very important point that has been made is this idea of going back to first principles. What there is a tendency for designers to do is to kind of lift a set of ideas and then just run with them. What we want on this project, what we want in this competition, because it's an ideas competition, is to go back to first principles, to question some of the fundamentals. And I think this is both what Francine and Dr. Mathonsi talked about, is going back and testing some of the kind of initial simple principles and ideas, and then building from that. But making sure you've got a really strong theoretical foundation to build from. And you understand how space works, you understand how units and density work, etc. And then you can layer on all the other complexity that makes really good housing. I'm coming to you, Prof. Mbanga. Any last comments, questions from your side?
Not really questions, Prof. Jerry. Rather an appreciation also of the input by Francine. Yeah, I think it has been a useful engagement. Yeah, I always have this in mind that these inputs and also on these workshops and also the competition itself should in some way, Peter Barassi is not here. I know they were also calling for some national IPT summit, which was postponed. I mean, there are a lot of things that they might be working on that. It's how some of these useful ideas, including those that come from students in this competition, I mean, series, can be factored into the human settlement planning processes. We understand the system, how it goes, how projects are managed, are initiated for housing. But in the same way, something I must mention, I'm also starting to discuss with DSI in the STI4HS work or research group. How can these ideas, like where we are rotating the competition across cities and some beautiful ideas are coming, how can those be brought in? I mean, we subscribe to co-creation of knowledge, like in the university, including communities, like self-built designs that Francine has presented, but including on the competition, the views of the young people, the students, and how best. It's something I'm still trying to run myself, but I'm just running that idea with the other agencies. Maybe Dr. Mathonsi, we might come back to you and the planning division that manages the conditional grant business plan and subsidy allocation, and find within that system, that policy process, whether we can find a space for some of these beautiful ideas to be tested in demonstration sites, maybe into the future. Basically, it's the type of impact I was also trying to look at, but I'm still engaging on that, Jerry, but I guess we can discuss. Usually also, Francine, as you might know better, we might at some point have to pause and prepare not just a report for the supporters of the competition, what is considered as a policy brief, even if it's not solicited. Some of the ideas that came, then package them into some policy brief for presentation, maybe to the national department, DG, and maybe other colleagues in the policy unit. That can be quite useful. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that Francine is closer to you, because I suspect on the thematic areas of the white paper, she has to make a contribution directly there as well. Thanks, colleagues.
Okay.
Because Prof, this is how Prof. Jeremy always says, the students, they will provide us with the ideas. The students will come with the abstract thoughts. So yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful to hear that you might build some of these projects.
Yeah.
So I think that's very interesting idea, and I think it's again a very strong incentive to think about. If you come across and present and share really good ideas, there's huge amounts of coverage that comes from this competition. So even if you don't win a prize, there will be many people who look at it. And if you present it really well, there's all sorts of places it can go. And I think this is really what Prof. Mbanga is saying, is that we've got the eyes and the ears of Department of Science and Innovation. We've got some of the big research projects that are working on housing and human settlements. We've got human settlements themselves as kind of part of the interested parties. And I think that's, a very interesting idea, is kind of think about that as you develop up some ideas. And ideally, what we want to see is some of these ideas really being carried through and being experimented and piloted in different projects. And Prof. Mbanga's, directly involved with 3 or 4 projects currently. So I think there's certainly lots of potential. Let me come back to Dr. Mathonsi. I think you had your hand up.
Yes, in fact, I was provoked by Prof. Prof. Mbang. And thank you so much, Prof. Gilbert, for giving me this opportunity. Really, look, when Prof raised that issue of how best can we begin to have these ideas, some of these engagements with students that are coming up with fresh approaches, fresh theoretical perspectives on how best we can do our work, especially from a planning point of view and policy point of view as far as human settlements is concerned. In actual fact, it just reminded me of my early years when I left university and joined government, and where how much I felt that I needed an opportunity to be given a chance to begin to engage. And fortunately, the people that were mentoring me at the time, because I was at COG, it was DPLG, I was in a research unit. I actually got that opportunity and I was able to flourish from there. But coming very close to what Prof was beginning to sort of contemplate upon, I personally would think that greater partnerships with universities, with research institutes, will actually begin to give us an opportunity to have this very fresh perspective, because the work that we do is not very far from what universities do, because we are in the knowledge generating industry. And you will understand that research and policy is right at the heart of those practices. And I want to believe that a greater involvement of universities, your institutes, your research organizations, that each time, for example, I'm happy that even in this white paper process that we're busy with, we're beginning to involve university, we're beginning to involve institutes, we're beginning to involve reference groups, so that at least we have policy development processes that are very inclusive, especially on key stakeholders, and of which we understand that universities as well as students are key stakeholders. Just as of today, I was actually looking at some of the research topics that have been conducted across universities that speaks to housing and human settlement. And you can imagine that if I had very close proximity with key people in universities, I'll be able to tap into these databases of the theses as well as dissertations that have been produced, so with so much ease. And I want to believe that this is what I'm also going to propose in our branch meetings, to say let's bring these key stakeholders much closer. Prof, thank you so much for raising that, and Prof. Gilbert, thank you so much as well for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
No, perfect. No, so you can see there's a lot of interest and excitement. We're starting to look forward to some of the ideas coming through. I'm noticing we're a couple of minutes to closing, so very last chance for questions, comments from anyone, and because we'll close in the next couple of minutes. Any last comments. Francine, do you have anything to say? I think just in terms of any other questions that have come through, everybody's kind of on board and knows what, yeah.
Yeah, students also, and lecturers on the call, please email if you have any concerns, if you have any queries, please email. And then thank you so very much. I'm expecting we'll have a lot of people next week, but for those of you that could attend today, thank you so very much. I'll have the video and the PowerPoints loaded up as soon as possible.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our presenters. Fantastic, huge amounts of material. And we hope you can sift through it and get some of the nuggets. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. Okay, bye-bye.